A social worker thinks she has rescued a girl from her abusive parents, but then realizes that the girl is not as innocent as she seems. So today on Cinema Recapped, I'll show you Case 39. The film begins with a woman named Emily who works as a social worker and has closed a total of 38 cases. Her boss arrives and gives her a new case, Case 39. The case involves a girl named Lilith who misbehaves in class because she suffers from domestic violence at home, so the social workers go to the girl's house to talk to her parents about it. However, Lilith's parents have a very strange behavior. The mother never smiles and the father does not even want to exchange a word with Emily. Then Emily tells her boss about the parents' strange behavior, so her boss calls the couple in to talk to them at the police station. However, when they show up, they seem like they are great parents. Emily finds a way to talk to Lilith in private so she can see if she's being mistreated at home. And Lilith responds that her parents hate her and that she has even heard them say they want to send her to hell. Then Emily asks a friend who is a police officer to help her get the girl out of the house because she believes that the parents are planning to hurt her. However, the policeman tells her that in order to help her, she has to show evidence that the girl is in danger. The next day, Emily meets Lilith at her school to give her phone number in case she ever feels unsafe at home. That night, Emily receives a call from Lilith who tells her that she thinks her parents are planning something bad, but she ends up falling asleep. So Emily calls her friend and they both go to the girl's house to verify that she's okay. However, when they arrive, they realize that the parents are trying to kill Lilith by putting her in an oven. So Emily and the police enter the house, they fight the parents, and they save the little girl. The couple is put on trial, where the judge orders a psychiatric examination since it is possible that their mental health is not well. This makes Emily angry because she believes that they should be in jail. Meanwhile, Lilith is transferred to an orphanage where she could find a new family, but she doesn't like living there, so she tells Emily that she wants to live with her. And although Emily at first refuses, she ends up asking her boss for an authorization to take custody for the girl until the orphanage finds a family for her. Emily takes the girl home and takes good care of her. The next day, her work sends her to Lilith's old house, and as she's exploring, she sees a lock on her parents' bedroom as if they were afraid that someone would break in. Meanwhile, we see a child that is in therapy because he has problems with his behavior. He seems to be a quiet child who loves his parents a lot. This child is in a group therapy with Lilith and other children with a psychologist who is also Emily's co-worker. Emily picks Lilith up from therapy and takes her home. Then the next day when Emily goes to work, her boss tells her that the child who was in therapy killed his parents the night before. Emily goes to the crime scene and talks to the boy, but he seems to be very sorry for what he's done and he even cries. Emily is confused at this as she doesn't know why the child would do such a thing. So she talks to her co-worker, the psychologist, but he tells her to not let it bother her. The next day, Emily is chilling at home and suddenly realizes that Lilith has a photo that belongs to her as she was looking through her things. Emily doesn't get angry at this, but she tells Lilith that the lady in the photo is her mother and that she died in a car accident. However, when she finishes talking to Lilith, Emily takes her personal things and puts them in a locked room so Lilith cannot touch them again. The next day, Emily goes to eat with her friend, the policeman, and there, through the newspaper, she realizes that Lilith's parents were declared crazy and will probably be transferred to a psychiatric care. Then the policeman tells Emily that the night the child killed his parents, he had received a call from Emily's house, but Emily tells the policeman that she did not call him. So they both come to the conclusion that maybe Lilith is the one who made the call. Emily and the policeman talk to Lilith and ask her if she had any contact with the boy that night, but Lilith tells him that she did not call anyone. And Emily seems to believe her, but the policeman doesn't. The next day, Emily asks the boy who called him that night. However, when Emily asks this, the boy begins to feel frightened and even has problems breathing. So he's transferred to the hospital where the boy confirms to Emily that someone called him, but it was a man. That same day, Lilith has a session with the psychologist. He asks her what is her worst fear, and Lilith answers that she will tell him what she is afraid of, only if he answers the question first. So, the psychologist then tells Lilith that he is afraid of bees, and Lilith tells him that she is afraid of herself, since she has bad thoughts about people, and even confesses that she has bad thoughts involving him. After talking about the thoughts, she warns him that he should worry about what is to come, as if she's threatening him. So the psychologist gets scared and confused by the behavior of the girl. He tells Emily what happened, then goes home. When he arrives, he begins to receive strange calls with weird sounds. Suddenly, he starts to feel discomfort in one of his ears, and after examining himself, he finds a bee. He throws it into the toilet, but then more and more bees start to come out from his ears and other parts of his body, making him go crazy until he ends up killing himself. Then Emily attends the funeral, and she begins to feel that something is wrong with Lilith because she remembers that the psychologist told her that he felt threatened by her. Emily then begins to investigate and finds a video recording where Lilith's mother says that Her and her husband used to have brothers, but when Lilith was born, they began to die one by one, and she blames the girl, saying that she is the incarnation of evil. The mother also says that she could not get rid of her until Lilith found someone new, and this makes Emily feel very scared. Emily decides to go see Lilith's parents at the clinic. However, the nurse tells her that the mother has gone crazy because she scratches her own skin, so Emily has no choice but to talk to the father instead. He tells her about Lilith, and that she is not his daughter, but an old destructive soul like a demon, that she feeds off the goodness of people. He warns her that she is going to hurt her using her worst fear against her. Emily gets scared at this, and when she gets home, she starts to put away all the important papers and phones and any objects that Lilith could use to hurt her, leaving only a knife to defend herself with. At that moment, Lilith arrives from school and begins to ask why the phones are gone, and Emily says that they broke down. Then we see that Lilith is suspicious of the situation. The next day, Emily asks the orphanage if they have found a family for Lilith, but the manager tells her that not yet, and that for now, Emily has to take responsibility of her because she was the one who promised to take care of her. Emily has no choice but to continue taking care of Lilith. So she goes to pick her up from a therapy session with the psychologist, and when she arrives, she sees that Lilith is whispering things into a girl's ear. Emily thinks that she is putting strange ideas into her head, so angrily, she pulls Lilith away from the other girl. The psychologist, seeing this, scolds Emily for mistreating the girl, but Lilith says it's okay. Then on the way to the elevator, Emily tells Lilith that she will not be returning to those sessions because she does not want her to be around other children. Lilith gets angry at this and tells Emily, "Are you sure?" And suddenly Emily can feel that the elevator is broken, and when it's about to crash to the ground, everything goes back to normal and the elevator's door is open. Emily gets even more scared, so she decides to go see her friend the police to tell him everything, hoping that he can help her. However, he doesn't believe her, and he only tells her that it's all in her head and that none of it is real. So Emily has no choice but to protect herself. She puts locks in her room, but Lilith realizes this. Emily locks herself in the room and takes a screwdriver for self-defense. At night, as it's raining outside and there's a thunderstorm, Lilith knocks on her door saying that she is afraid, but Emily does not want to open the door, so she just ignores her. However, Lilith begins to knock louder and louder on the door, yelling at her to let her in. Emily gets scared, and when it seemed that the girl was gone, suddenly Emily sees a monster coming out of her closet. So she runs out of the house. She runs down the street and sees a bus driver and asks for help, but he tells her that no one is chasing her, and when Emily turns to the street, she doesn't see any monster. So she just walks away. Without knowing where to go, she decides to get in her car and try to escape. But Lilith is in the back seat and tells her that she must never leave her alone, and that from now on she has to obey everything she says. So Emily begins to cry out of desperation and fear. The next day, she sees Lilith's father again, but this time she asks him how to get rid of the girl. The man replies that she must kill her, but this can only be done while she's sleeping, although Lilith rarely sleeps. Emily then goes to the policeman again and asks for help, and this time he believes her and even offers to help kill the girl. So Emily goes home to look for Lilith while the policeman gets a gun. However, when the officer leaves the police station with a gun, he sees that a bunch of dogs are growling at him. And when he gets in his car, he discovers that there is a dog in the car waiting for him and it bites him in the neck. So the policeman tries to shoot it with the gun, but he fails and ends up shooting himself. Emily receives a call letting her know that the officer died. At this, Emily gets really angry and demands Lilith to leave her house. However, Lilith answers with a demon voice and that she must never yell at her again. Emily gets scared and runs to her room and covers the door with everything she can find. But Lilith begins to bang on the door with such force that it knocks it down. So Emily runs to hide under her bed. Lilith approaches her slowly, so Emily asks what she wants. The girl replies that she only wants her love. So Emily tells her that she can love her if she doesn't hurt her. That night, Emily prepares coffee for Lilith and crushes sleeping pills to give it to her. Then, when she is asleep, she starts to pour gasoline in the house and burns the girl alive. However, when she leaves, she realizes that Lilith is outside as well. Then, both Emily and Lilith get in the car, driving without a destination. Lilith then tells Emily that she finally knows what she is afraid of, being like her mother, because apparently she was a woman who hated herself and also hated her own daughter. Then Emily looks at herself in the rearview mirror as she is transforming into her mother, and she can barely keep a grip on driving, as if she was going to have a car accident, just like her mother. However, Emily begins to say that none of this is true until everything finally returns to normal, and now Lilith is the one who gets scared. At that moment, Emily turns the car towards a lake. Then she fights a demon underwater until she manages to lock him in. Emily finally comes to the surface safe and sound and looks into the water and sees bubbles. She can finally rest. The end. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe to continue receiving the recaps of the best horror movies. My name is TC, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.